Your data is like gold to hackers. They'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee Secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does without me lifting a finger, so I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Hey Beat Check listeners, I'm Julia Silverman, and I'm the Oregonian's K-12 education reporter, but today we are talking baseball and the potential future of Major League Baseball in the city of Portland. Joining me are Oregonian sports columnist Bill Oram, who has been covering the heck out of the Portland Diamond Project, and Mike Wilkerson, the Director of Economic Research at EcoNorthwest, who put together a much-discussed report on the crossroads that the city is facing right now. Welcome to the show, Bill and Mike. Thank you guys for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you, Julia.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Let's dive in. Bill, let's start with some good news for a change. Give us the dirt. Wait, did I just make a baseball pun? This is a big day for me. Dirt, baseball, mound, anyway. About the current status of the Portland Diamond Project's efforts to build a stadium at the foot of the Tillicum Bridge in the South Waterfront neighborhood, in the Zidell Yard site where I once attended a very memorable Feast Portland night market event. That's neither here nor there.
I want to hear more about the Feast Market event, frankly.
It was so delicious. I really do still think about it.
So the update on the Portland Diamond Project is, you know, there have been steps along the way, and I don't want to go too deep on it, but about a year ago, the Portland Diamond Project set its sights on the Red Tail Golf Center in Washington County, and that was not a proposal that the city of Portland was on board with. Even though Portland owns the Red Tail Golf Center, it was very clear from City Hall economic leaders that for this to be something that really made sense for Portland, it needed to be in the central corridor of Portland. And so back to the table, they came back with Zidell Yards, which had been a location that they had looked into and considered a couple of years earlier, end up getting a deal done there. Portland City Council at the end of last year, at the end of Ted Wheeler's term, give a full-throated 5-0 endorsement of the project, essentially aligning the city's priorities with a ballpark project and a Major League Baseball project. Okay. This week, Craig Cheek, who is the founder CEO of the Portland Diamond Project, shows up at the state legislature, flanked by Keith Wilson, the current mayor of Portland, and Andrew Hone, the CEO of the Portland Metro Chamber, to essentially make the pitch, another baseball pun, for baseball in Portland, and this project being a win for Portland and the region's economy. The big things that came out of it were pictures. People like pictures. Pictures are worth 1,000 words and more. Renderings of this ballpark, and I'm assuming, I know everybody I'm talking to here has seen them. I'm hoping a lot of listeners and readers have seen them. They are spectacular. Populous, the architecture firm, does a great job with these. It really does paint a picture of what baseball could look like on the waterfront. But the other piece of this is, it's not just that Craig Cheek was there to sell a vision. He also needs something. And what the Diamond Project is going to need to proceed, and really might be the linchpin of this whole project, is an update to a Senate bill that was passed way back in 2003, SB 5, which essentially provided a carve out of state income tax revenue from baseball players and team employees who make over $50,000. So in 2003, the legislature passed that bill to provide $150 million in revenue from those individuals' tax dollars. My reporting has revealed that it is going to be that they are looking to modernize it to closer to $900 million, in the $800 to $900 million range, which is consistent with inflation, player salaries, obviously construction costs, which have obviously skyrocketed. But the question really is, does the Oregon Legislature have the political will to sign off on something as big sounding as that for baseball? And what I wrote in my column, and I'm a columnist, I write opinion, just for anyone who's unclear. It's a big number, but it's not a big ask, in my opinion. And the reason for that is this is not a tax on current Portland residents. It is not a tax on you and me. And I'm sure Mike can explain this better than I can, but it is a tax on future income or future revenue that will only come in if there is a baseball team. And there will only be a baseball team, in my opinion, if this tax is approved. So either way, this is not lost revenue for the state of Oregon, because either Oregon's not getting this tax revenue because there's not a baseball team, or Oregon's not getting this tax revenue because it is being siphoned off to pay for the ballpark. So to me, this is a win. It's found money. Julia's making a face, but that's sort of where we are.
Just to be clear, it's just so much found money. $900 million you can get from just the people associated with this project? Really? I don't know whether that's a question for you or Mike. Mike's nodding. Mike?
Yeah,
ahead,
I mean,
Mike.
I can't comment on the actual numbers. To be clear, so we've been engaged by Portland Diamond Project, and we're looking at updating the revenue estimate associated with SB5, and our hope is in a couple of weeks to go back down and testify in Salem on the specifics of the numbers. Okay, but the orders of magnitude we're talking about are in the realm of reasonable. Why is the number so big? Player salaries are a lot, and the traveling party along with them, including staff, GMs, etc., is probably and doubles the size of the players, not the salaries, but just the bodies. And the way that taxes work is, the traveling party, when they're in Oregon, pays the full amount. So for every game at home, 80-ish games, you get the tax from the Portland team and the other teams. And in baseball, the salary caps are, whatever. Typically, you're going to double the amount of the revenue from the Portland team. And so you look at that and you bond that over a long period of time, that dollar amount is meaningful because in Oregon, our tax structure, right, is very progressive. And so once you tip into the highest income, you're paying at that highest amount of income. And so the state is very sensitive to that generally in terms of the effective rate. So here you're getting very high salary people whose rate then becomes very high. And that's different than, let's say, people earning the median income, in and around $80,000. This is very different in terms of the tax rate's much closer to 10 than statewide. Today, the tax rate on average is about 6%. So you get kind of double the bang for your buck per income, and it's a huge income, and that translates ultimately into the potential for a big revenue mechanism.
Okay, I'm going to get back to the pretty pictures in a second because I really want to talk about them. It's like total Architectural Digest porn. Am I allowed to say porn on Beat Check? I'm not sure, but I just said it. But I just want to ask, does the fact that we would be using that kind of structure make Major League Baseball less likely to pick us? Like, in other words, do they want their players and their traveling party, as Mike puts it, to be on the hook for covering that kind of a cost?
I mean, I'll defer to Bill as well, but my sense is they want a public commitment of resource. Yeah. And I think, as Bill mentioned, this is the one that is from a state investment standpoint. We typically will look at, what's the return on investment from the state. So if you take a kin project, let's take CHIPS. They put, hundreds of millions of dollars in, and then we can calculate what the return is because the economy is going to be growing. Here is a little bit different. It's almost like, I would say, more like an infinite return, because the counterfactual is you don't have that salary, right? So without baseball, you don't have 25 plus multi-million dollar people earning salaries in the state. And so the counterfactual is nothing. And so does Major League Baseball want a public commitment? They absolutely do. The question is, what is the structure that individual jurisdictions are willing to do? And this is one that I would say has a strong history of other precedents in the state. SIP agreements, say Intel, Genentech, et cetera, and the gain share mechanism where those income tax dollars then flow back into the local jurisdictions, to me is a very similar type of a mechanism.
Bill,
and I would just add that, baseball players, team employees, they're going to be paying income tax at their proper rate anyway. This is not an additional tax on them. It is not a punitive tax on them to fund the stadium. It is just where their tax dollars are going.
Okay.
And to be clear, right, the benefit to the state then is all the other economic activity that could be generated from having baseball then does generate fiscal impact. And so it's not like you take all of the expansion of resource and divert it away. The state does win in a big way from this. I think that's the big takeaway here is what's the risk, who has it, et cetera.
Mike, one thing that I think would be really helpful, and if you have some perspective here, is there seems to be a belief that ballpark projects, stadium projects do not drive economic revitalization. And, I'm imagining 2.5 million people coming to downtown Portland in 5 months a year, a all-year facility in the South Waterfront, activating a huge part of Portland's waterfront that is currently not really a destination. I don't see how that isn't an economic asset. What is your perspective on how that will actually drive economic growth for the city of Portland?
Bill's now the host of the podcast, everybody, just in case
I'm
you were
also
wondering.
a reporter, Julia.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to serve my role as answering your question. Yeah, it's massive. Okay, so, first of all, what you see today with all major professional franchise stadiums is that it's not just ever the stadium. It's the stadium and a whole bunch of other development that's associated with that. And you can look at every single example. And the fact that the Zidell Yards has the ability to not only accommodate a stadium, but also literal vacant land in one of the most high value places in the region with access to public transportation, bike, pedestrian, et cetera facilities, it is a dream location. Coupled with the fact that, like most central cities, our foot traffic activity is way down from where it was before. And so the question is, what are the lifts that are going to get us there? This is right at the top of the list in terms of biggest lifts that you could move, to Bill's point, 2-3+ million people a year coming down. For a frame of reference, okay, this is, I get oftentimes associated with the bearer of bad news. Okay, this is just the facts. Okay. We're down 25 million foot traffic trips per year from where we were pre-pandemic. Okay. From a visitor perspective, so you can take out employees and return to office, and let's just hope that to a certain extent that might resolve itself over time. But just from visitors alone, we're down about 18 million trips. So this isn't the panacea of you just do this and everything else is fine and we're back to where we were. But if you're thinking about big catalytic moves, this is at the top of the list in terms of the big catalytic moves.
Yeah, and if I can just offer some dumb anecdata, my husband's a Red Sox fan. He grew up in Boston, and every year on his birthday, which is coming up, happy birthday in 2 days, Jeff, I get him Sox tickets. And we go up to Seattle and we get a hotel and we go see a game and we go out to eat. It's really fun. And, that's what you mean, right? Like all these, people coming to the game because
there's two parts there, right? There's just central city activation, which is just straight up numbers of people. Then there's the traded sector component, which is what you're talking about. And that's how the economy grows. And so it's bringing people from out of region that typically wouldn't be here. It's the TV money. It's all of it that comes in that is added growth into the region. It's sometimes where I think, Bill, you're getting at with the kind of fraught nature of recovery is you're just moving chairs on the Titanic, right? So it's like, well, someone's going to spend money in Portland anyways. And so what does adding a ballpark do? Okay, well, there's some truth to that, but really you do get a massive expansion. And from the sense of central city activation, which is sorely needed today, like that, this is one of those big moves that can help do that.
All right, I'm going back to the pretty pictures. Bill, for any listeners that might not have seen them, hit me with that, timber and glass and reflection of the water as I kayak past. I don't own a kayak, but I will get one. Paint us a picture.
So picture the Portland airport renovation
Which is
expanded to a
awesome.
major league ballpark. With large timber beams, artistically, built, a retractable roof that is, different from any retractable roof I've ever seen. In the renderings, it is, almost like this is not going to do what it is. This is not going to do it justice, but it looks like a barn, like a glass barn that would slide back over the field for, weather days. It's clear. It's not actually glass, but a translucent material, with boardwalks going out over the river. In the renderings, they do have people on the river sailgating, I believe is the term I heard Craig Cheek use in front of the legislative representatives the other day, which is something that is common in Seattle, but Portland hasn't quite figured out yet. Tons of pedestrian traffic coming across the Tillicum crossing directly into the ballpark. It's really just beautiful. It's hard for me to figure out how to describe it, other than it's very state of the art, modern, beautiful building. And I think that, and I will just say from a public perception standpoint, the Portland Diamond Project has put out past renderings at other locations that I think people have seen, maybe gotten a little bit excited about, and then that's gone away. And I think people need to understand that what's different now about this current situation is that there is alignment from the top of city government, in the business community. The economic data supports it, to the actual people, running the project. Like, this alignment has not existed at any other stage of the Portland Diamond Project's efforts. So that's what's different. This location is real. The other locations were all sort of, what ifs. This location is locked in, and they can start really, making real tangible plans. It has the infrastructure, and you can start getting creative to solve, some of the hurdles that we can all identify. We can all say, oh, parking will be an issue. Oh, how does OHSU feel? Like, there's hurdles that we can identify, but you can start getting creative about how you would solve them in this location.
It sounds super bougie, and I'm kind of into the vibe, I'm not going to lie. Okay, so guys, tell me a little bit about the unknowns. One of the big questions is Major League Baseball, right? And what they want to do. What's standing in the way here? What don't we know? And also, guys, is Phil Knight involved? He's the guy, right? He's a billionaire? Come on. No? Ugh.
I feel like
I'm
Mike
shaking
might
my
know.
head, but I'll say it in words since this is a podcast. I have no idea.
Mike doesn't know. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's not Phil Knight.
And guys, we're talking about there is an ownership group behind this project, but thus far their identity has remained shrouded in mystery. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
And I did push Craig Cheek this week about that owner. He did not want to break his news in an interview with me on the telephone that I was taking notes on a back of a Trader Joe's grocery sack because I couldn't find a notebook. That was not how we learned this information. I did ask him. I took a shot. I said, "Is it Barack Obama?" He said it is not Barack Obama, that if it was Barack, it would probably need to be a basketball project. So if you're trying to figure out who it is and you've got a list of billionaires, you can just go ahead and cross off Barack. Is Barack a billionaire? He may not be a billionaire.
Is it Elon Musk? Probably not. I'm just going to...
Mike tells me that Barack Obama is not a billionaire. So good to know.
I think he has friends who are billionaires, so that's probably close to the same, but yeah.
Correct. So, Julia, your question was, is it Phil Knight, or who is it? Is that your question? Who is it?
Mm-hmm.
We do not know who it is. And that is going to be a big part of this, I think. And I think that's something that is going to need to eventually be revealed if they want the legislature to get on board with this project. I have a very difficult time seeing, the chambers of the Oregon Legislature approving this massive change to a longstanding bill without knowing who's ponying up for the other half of it. And so I assume that there will be a rollout as part of this process. Mike just said a couple more weeks until they'll go back to the legislature, probably with more tangible numbers. And that was a question that got asked during the hearing on Monday. And once there's an actual actionable item in front of lawmakers, I think that's going to be the first question they will ask, and something that the Diamond Project is going to need to be prepared to answer or roll out publicly before they get there.
Cool. And can someone tell me a little bit about the competition? Because we're not the only city out there that wants a crack at an expansion team, right?
I just feel like I'm talking a lot. I could definitely let Mike handle this one.
I mean, I think, Salt Lake has an approved package, so they're certainly in the mix. I think, there's only so many cities who are kind of meeting the criteria of that. And I think it's unknown the timeline of when expansion will happen, how many. There's speculation. Bill covers this more than I do, but I think the goal, the thinking is there's at least one, probably two teams. When in the next couple of years, Salt Lake, I think, is certainly doing all the things in advance. And I think that's key here. Is I'd say a lesson learned from CHIPS would be you don't want to be in a panic mode, scrambling at the last second to be last in with your package versus getting out in front and having the opportunity to build public will. So I would say that's a lesson learned, and something that certainly is in place here that wasn't necessarily the case. And timelines are certainly different here than that. But, getting out in front, there aren't a lot of other cities, regions who are out in front, Salt Lake being the most notable one.
So, all right. Bottom of the third, 2 strikes, 3 men on. That was right, everybody? What is the probability that this actually comes to fruition from us? Does anybody want to take a flying guess? Mike, I know you do. You look like you do.
All right. So, everyone thinks economists like doing forecasts, right? And the founder of our firm, Ed Whitelaw, used to say, it's kind of like forecasting's like watching a blindfolded javelin thrower. It's highly entertaining and very inaccurate. And I think for us, what I would say is the current economic circumstance, and as Bill mentioned, the alignment of public and private is much more than it ever has been. And so, I think to me, the hard part is even if the state funding mechanisms comes into place, that's not the only requirement. You're going to need regional support. And even if all of those things happen, the big uncertainty is ultimately with MLB. And so I think the probability is fair that at the state and regional level, with the urgency around finding big moves that are catalytic, and this being amongst the highest options that are currently on the table, I think that's a reasonable expectation. Beyond that, I think there's lots of other moving pieces, including ownership, certainly, including MLB.
Gotcha.
There's so many variables, Julia, that I think you kind of need to take it a step at a time. And what I do think, and what people I've spoken to have told me, is there's a lot of optimism about getting the support from the legislature, and getting the support from the legislature would essentially put Portland on what I would consider to be a level playing field with Salt Lake. Salt Lake did this 2 years ago. Well, they did the legislative piece a year ago. 2 years ago, they had a site locked in that was shovel ready. They have an ownership group that is out in front of this. It's the Miller family, which owned the Utah Jazz for 30 plus years. A very credible bid from Salt Lake. But I think if ownership comes to the fore, you get the financing locked in, you have the location, you have the renderings. Now I think it's Portland and Salt Lake head to head. And then it kind of becomes a matter of, what does Major League Baseball want? It has long talked about wanting another team in the Pacific time zone. The Mountain time zone is close, so maybe that's not a huge separator, but is that a factor? Is the potential for a Seattle-Portland rivalry something Major League Baseball wants to help facilitate? And what is going to do more to help grow the game? And I think, Salt Lake City is a boom economy. It's obviously a very business friendly state. People are moving in ways that they aren't moving into Portland. So there's a lot to like about the idea of growing with Salt Lake City if you're Major League Baseball. But I also do think that the pictures matter. I really do. And if you're sitting in New York and you are talking about adding 2 more, Major League Baseball franchises and giving your fans something to be excited about the sport, the idea of being along the Willamette River in that way, with a stadium like that, is something you can really sink your teeth into and get excited about. And Craig Cheek has described it as an iconic location and potential to be an iconic stadium. And I think that's a reasonable remark. If you can actually get to that point, like that would be an absolute, it'd be a postcard from Portland, Oregon. Greetings from Portland, and the ballpark along the Willamette River. I mean, that'd be great PR for Portland and great PR for Major League Baseball.
I looked up the pictures from Salt Lake. It is not as pretty. There are some mountains, fine, whatever, in the background, but it's kind of brown. Let's close out. I like to finish up our podcasts with something fun. So I wanted to ask you both, what's your current favorite baseball team, and do you have any treasured baseball memories? I will go first and say that I was 9 years old in New York City when the Mets won the World Series, and I was hopelessly deeply in love with a pitcher called Ron Darling. And but later on, when my son played Little League, watching him pitch was just too hard. I had to hide behind a tree until his turn was up. What about you, Mike? Are you a baseball fan?
I am born and raised in Toronto. So you can imagine my team of affiliation was the Toronto Blue Jays, and I was very spoiled at a young age to see back-to-back World Series, thinking that this was something that happens with frequency. And now 30 plus years on later, I don't know that we are closer to doing that anytime soon. But yes, I'm a long time Toronto Blue Jays fan.
Portland might
Bill?
win a World Series before Toronto does.
Harsh.
So I've kind of got a split answer. I grew up watching Ken Griffey Jr. with the Mariners, and Ken Griffey Jr. is the greatest baseball player of all time, has the greatest swing of all time. Ken Griffey Jr. can do no wrong. But when I was 13, I did go on a trip to New York with my mom, and we couldn't afford Yankees tickets. So we went to Shea Stadium to watch the Mets, and they played the Royals in an interleague game. And I just remember walking like around and around Shea to get to our seats, and then this guy from Queens sitting behind me arguing with his wife about why he was going to spend $8 on a beer because it's the bowl game. Got to have a beer at the bowl game. It's kind of more Boston-y probably.
Yeah,
but
no, that didn't.
Anyway, he did. And I just was so taken by it. And so I've actually been a Mets fan ever since then.
I love
and we have
that
a lot
answer.
of Mets fans on our staff because Shane Dixon Kavanaugh is also a Mets fan.
Love that answer for you. Bill and Mike, this has been so much fun, a great conversation, and I'm going to follow this really closely. And our readers and listeners can too, in future stories in the Oregonian and online at OregonLive.com. We'll drop links to relevant stories in the show notes where you can read more about the potential future of Major League Baseball in Portland. Thank you for listening to Beat Check with the Oregonian. If you like the show, give us a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts. It really helps people find the show, and tell your friends, help spread the word. But the very best way to support our journalism and read everything that's on Bill's mind is with a subscription to the Oregonian and Oregon Live. You can do that at OregonLive.com/pod support. Until next time, we'll call it. Wait, what do they say at the end of baseball games? Is there like an iconic thing? No, never mind. We'll call it a wrap.
Julia, you're out.
There it is.